The hum of the ship's engines vibrated through the floor, a constant reminder that they were moving, that they were alive. Captain Alara Hayes stared out the bridge's viewing port, the stars beyond swirling in their infinite, indifferent dance. The news had come just hours earlier, a transmission from the Galactic Council declaring war on humanity. She gripped the edge of the console, her fingers digging into the cold surface, her breath steady, controlled. The shock had worn off, replaced by a heavy resolve that she hadn't expected. They had crossed the line. The line humanity never thought they'd cross. Now, the Council wanted blood. "Captain!" came a voice behind her, her comms officer, Lieutenant Asha Tran. "The fleet's ready for briefing. It's time." Alara didn't answer immediately. Her thoughts were elsewhere, considering the implications. The Galactic Council, a coalition of the most powerful species in the galaxy, had always viewed humanity as a rogue element, wild, unpredictable, and unruly. Until now, they'd managed to ignore humanity's growing influence in the galaxy. But now, the Council had officially declared war. She turned to face Asha, seeing the worry in her eyes mirrored by the tension in the lines of her jaw. "Thanks, Lieutenant. I'll be right there." Alara straightened her uniform, a flicker of movement in her mind as she forced her thoughts to focus. There was no time to waste. No time for self-doubt. Humanity needed a leader, and she had been chosen by the stars themselves to be that leader. The briefing room was dimly lit, the overhead lights casting long shadows on the faces of the senior officers who had already gathered. Alara's crew had come to rely on her judgment, and right now, their trust was the only thing she had to go on. "Captain!" Commander Jace Carter greeted her, standing by the holotable. His voice was calm, but the tension in his posture betrayed his nerves. "The fleet's standing by. We've got one chance to make a real impact before they overwhelm us. How do you want to handle this?" Alara took her place at the head of the table, her gaze sweeping across the officers. There was no time to sugarcoat it. They were at the precipice of something monumental, and there was no room for hesitation. "I'll be blunt," she started, her voice firm. "The Galactic Council has declared war. They believe we're a threat, and they're ready to move on us. They want to shut us down. They're coming." The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over the officers like a shroud. "How do we respond, Captain?" Commander Carter asked, his voice breaking the quiet. Alara met his gaze, a flicker of fire behind her eyes. "We don't surrender. We don't back down. We fight." The officers exchanged looks. Some nodded, others remained uncertain, but none voiced their concerns. They understood the stakes. "The Council's forces are vast, but we have something they don't: unpredictability." Alara continued, her voice taking on a sharper edge. "We're human. We improvise. We take risks. We don't follow the rules unless it suits us." Lieutenant K. Johnson, her strategist, leaned forward, his brow furrowing. "They're sending their flagship, the Tyrannies. It's a dreadnought, equipped with enough firepower to erase a whole fleet in one strike. We'll be outgunned, Captain." Alara's eyes narrowed, the challenge a welcome one. "Then we hit them first. We take out their communications, disrupt their fleet coordination. If they can't see us coming, they can't react." "But that's risky," Asha said quietly. "We're talking about a direct strike against their strongest ship. It could end in disaster." Alara shot her a sharp glance. "It could, but it also could be the key to turning the tide. If we let them dictate the terms of engagement, they'll crush us before we even get a chance to fight back. This isn't just about winning a battle, it's about sending a message." The room grew quiet as the weight of her words sunk in. It was true. If humanity's fight with the Council was to have any hope of success, it couldn't be about conventional tactics. Humanity had to be unconventional, just as they had always been. "We launch tonight," Alara said, her decision final. "We strike first, before the Tyrannies reaches our borders. We use the element of surprise. We cripple their communications, disorient their forces, and take out their commanders." Asha frowned. "You're proposing a hit-and-run strategy?" A full-on ambush? Exactly, Alara replied. If we can disable their command ship, the rest of the fleet will fall apart. They won't know how to respond. And when they do, we'll already be long gone. The officers exchanged looks, their minds racing through the possibilities. They all knew the risks, but they also knew what was at stake. We'll need to move fast, Cade said. But it's doable. We'll hit them hard, Alara said, her voice low but filled with steel. And if we survive, we'll be sending a message the whole galaxy will hear. The briefing continued, strategies and contingencies drawn up, but Alara's mind kept returning to one thing, the declaration. The Galactic Council's statement had been clear. They saw humanity as a threat to the established order of the galaxy. They feared what humanity represented, an unpredictable, growing power that couldn't be controlled. Alara knew that war was inevitable now. The question was not whether humanity could win, but whether they could prove their worth. The Council thought humanity would fold under the weight of its might. They thought humanity would submit. Alara would make sure that they didn't get the chance to see that. She would make sure humanity's answer to the galaxy was clear. Is that all? She didn't know what would happen next. But one thing was certain, humanity wouldn't go down without a fight. The sharp sting of tension cut through the bridge of the Regulus, as the fleet moved into position. Captain Alara Hayes stood at the helm, her mind racing through the plan they had just set in motion. The Tyrannies, the Galactic Council's flagship, was on its way, and the first wave of humanity's response had to be flawless. She'd ordered the fleet to spread out, creating a broad front to confuse the enemy, but deep down, Alara knew the truth, the odds were against them. The Tyrannies alone could wipe out most of humanity's fleet in seconds. Their best chance lay in surprise, precision, and the unpredictability that only humans could bring to the table. Captain, fleet positions are confirmed, said Asha Tran, her voice steady but tinged with the same edge of anxiety that Alara felt. The Tyrannies is still on course. They haven't noticed us yet. Alara didn't respond immediately. She was watching the data stream, her fingers gripping the edge of the console. Each piece of information from the sensors told a different story, one that didn't add up. The Tyrannies was too calm, too predictable. They had expected a rush of communication from the Council fleet, but nothing came. Commander Carter, what's your assessment? Alara asked, turning to her second-in-command, who was standing by the tactical display. His eyes flicked to the holographic map. They're holding position, Captain. No sudden movements. It's almost like they know we're coming, Carter replied, narrowing his eyes. Something's not right. Agreed, Alara said, pacing back and forth. They're waiting for us to make the first move. Don't give them that satisfaction. The tension in the room grew heavier. The Tyrannies was a beast of war. Its massive guns could obliterate entire fleets with a single volley. But Alara had one thing going for her. Humans didn't think the way other species did. The Council relied on precise, controlled tactics. Humans didn't. And in that difference lay their strength. Lieutenant Johnson, she said, turning to the ship's weapons officer, prepare the flares. I want them to think we're attacking from the far side. Then we move in fast and hard. Disable their comms systems. We won't give them the time to organize. Understood, Captain, Johnson replied, his fingers moving quickly over the console as he input the sequence. The bridge grew silent as the crew carried out their preparations. Outside the viewport, the dark void of space seemed endless, filled with stars and the distant glow of approaching battle. Alara could feel the weight of every decision, each choice becoming more consequential as time passed. Everything's set, Carter said after a few minutes. The flares will go off at your signal. Then let's make sure they believe their victory is assured. Alara muttered to herself, her eyes locked on the advancing Tyrannies. She took a deep breath, pushing her nerves into the back of her mind. This was their moment. Now! She barked. The flares shot forward, bursting into a brilliant display of light that lit up the blackness of space like a firework. The Council fleet's sensors would pick it up instantly, triggering a cascade of alarms. It was the perfect illusion. humans attacking head-on with all their might. But as the Tyrannies turned its guns, ready to launch a devastating barrage, Alara's ships peeled off in different directions. The Regulus and its companions were already moving, shifting like shadows in the night, their true positions a mystery. "Deploying the jamming signal now," Lieutenant Asha reported. "Their comms are offline." The Tyrannies shuddered as the interference hit. It wasn't enough to cripple the dreadnought, but it was enough to sow confusion. Alara's heart raced. The fleet was in motion now, breaking apart in a series of chaotic, unpredictable maneuvers that would throw the Council's coordination into disarray. "Captain, we're being engaged," Carter called out, his voice rising. "The smaller ships, corvette class, are breaking off to flank us." Alara's jaw clenched. They had anticipated that. The Council fleet would send their smaller, faster ships to engage the Regulus and its companions, hoping to draw them into a trap. But Alara had planned for that too. "Target the corvette-class ships. Keep them off our backs," she ordered. "Weapons hot." The battle began in earnest. Bright flashes of energy tore through the dark expanse of space, the hum of weapons discharging and the cries of the ship's alarms filling the air. Alara's crew had been trained for this moment, for chaos, for unpredictability. "Direct hit on their lead corvette, Captain!" Lieutenant K. Johnson shouted. "They're losing shields. We can finish them off." Alara nodded, her focus sharp. "Do it!" The Regulus turned hard, firing a precision shot that tore through the heart of the enemy corvette. It was quick, clean, and it sent a message: humanity wasn't just a threat to be pushed around. But even as they destroyed the smaller vessels, Alara's mind remained focused on the bigger picture. The Tyrannies was still there, looming larger and larger in the distance, its presence overwhelming. They had struck first, but the real fight was still to come. "Captain?" Carter's voice snapped her back to the present. "We've got incoming fire from the Tyrannies. They're targeting us directly." Alara's eyes flicked to the tactical display. The massive dreadnought's cannons were charging, and the sheer power of its next shot could shatter the Regulus in an instant. "Hold course," she ordered calmly. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers." The Regulus shifted at an angle, the crew working in unison, their every move synchronized. A sharp, thunderous crack rang out as the Tyrannies fired, the energy beam lancing out in a blinding streak. But Alara was ready. The ship veered, and the shot passed inches from their hull. "Now, Lieutenant Tran!" Alara shouted. Asha's fingers flew over the console, triggering a countermeasure that sent the Regulus into a sharp roll. The ship twisted, dodging another blast from the Tyrannies. The crew let out a collective breath. They had evaded the blast, but they wouldn't get lucky again. "Captain," Carter said, his voice grave, "this isn't sustainable. We need reinforcements, or we won't last long enough to deal with the Tyrannies." Alara glanced at the tactical display. Their fleet had already suffered losses, but they were still in motion, still fighting. She had to buy time for something bigger, something that would give humanity its true edge. "We're not done yet," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "We're not done until they understand what it means to challenge humanity." The Tyrannies wasn't the end of the battle. It was the beginning. Alara would make sure the galaxy understood exactly why they had underestimated the human race. The silence on the bridge of the Regulus was unnerving. After hours of brutal combat, the flares of energy fire and the shrill wail of the alarms had finally faded. But it was not peace that had settled in the ship, it was the heavy, anxious pause before the storm. Alara Hayes stood at the helm, her fingers resting on the console, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Tyrannies was still out there, looming like a shadow over the battlefield. Their ambush had been a success, but the Tyrannies had not yet fallen. Instead, it had pulled back, reorganizing. There would be no immediate victory. Alara turned toward the communication officer, Lieutenant Asha Tran. "Any word from the Council yet?" Asha's expression was tight, her eyes scanning the comms feed. "Not yet, Captain. But it's only a matter of time before they send an envoy." Alara nodded, her mind racing through the possibilities. The battle was far from over, but she knew the next step was not on the front lines, it was in the chamber of diplomacy. The council would attempt to talk, perhaps with demands of surrender or worse, with threats. It was inevitable. If they were to win this war, they needed to play their hand carefully now. The door to the bridge opened with a soft hiss, and Commander Jace Carter stepped in. His face was drawn, his usual stoic demeanor slightly strained. "Captain, the Council is requesting a diplomatic envoy." Elara took a deep breath. She had expected this. The Council wasn't known for rash decisions. They preferred negotiation, control, the careful tightening of the noose. "Set up the conference," she said. "I'll handle it." As she made her way to the conference room, the weight of the decision ahead of her pressed heavily on her shoulders. It was one thing to engage in battle. It was another entirely to sit down with the enemy and try to outwit them. The conference room was dimly lit, and the table was a smooth, metallic surface that reflected the soft glow of the overhead lights. Elara took her seat at the head, her eyes fixed on the viewscreen that would soon display the council's representative. The tension in the room was palpable as her officers filed in, taking their positions around the table. Moments later, the screen flickered to life. High Commissioner Vorex of the Zilthar appeared, his alien features angular and stern. The image was clear, but the coldness in his eyes was unmistakable. "I see you've decided to play games, Captain Hayes." Vorex's voice was deep and gravelly, his words measured. "You've already cost us several ships. Your recklessness is impressive." Elara remained calm, her expression neutral. "We don't play games, High Commissioner. We're protecting our people. Your declaration of war left us no choice." Vorex's lips twisted into something that might have been a smile, though it lacked warmth. "You misunderstand. This isn't about protection, Captain. This is about order. The Galactic Council has kept peace for centuries. You humans have thrown that into disarray with your expansion." "Expansion?" Elara leaned forward slightly, her voice steady but edged with defiance. "We're a growing species. We're not your pawns to be kept in check." Vorex's eyes narrowed. "You've destabilized the entire sector. And now you are forcing the Council's hand. A dangerous game, indeed." The silence hung in the air for a moment, thick with unspoken threats. Elara knew that Vorex wanted her to bow, to accept the terms of surrender, but that was not going to happen. She wasn't about to negotiate from a place of weakness. "Your terms are simple, Vorex," she said, her voice cold. "We stop expanding, we submit to your order. But that's not going to happen. Humanity is not yours to control." Vorex's eyes flickered with a hint of irritation. "You are very bold for someone in such a precarious position. Do you really think your fleet can survive a direct confrontation with the full might of the Council?" Elara met his gaze with unwavering confidence. "I don't need to win, Vorex. I just need to make sure you know we're not going to give up. You may have the numbers, but we have something you can't calculate: unpredictability." A flicker of frustration crossed Vorex's face before he regained his composure. "You think you're playing a clever game. But let me be clear, you will never be allowed to destabilize the galaxy. The Council will see to that. You'll see us as a threat until we're not," Elara replied. "Until we force you to respect us, until you understand that humanity doesn't play by the same rules as you. And when that happens, we'll have the upper hand." There was a long pause. Vorex studied her, his expression unreadable. "You still believe you can win, then?" "Not win," Elara said, her tone hardening. "Survive. We'll fight for our right to exist, and if it costs us everything, we'll take as much as we can with us." For a long moment, Vorex remained silent, contemplating her words. Then, with a sigh, he straightened his posture, his alien features smooth and calculating. "You are a stubborn species, Captain Hayes. But I see your point. You will not surrender easily." The Council's envoy finally spoke again, his voice cold and authoritative. "I'll give you a choice, Captain. Surrender now, and we'll spare your fleet. You can continue to exist, but under the Council's laws. Refuse, and you'll have no choice but to face the full might of our fleet. Elara didn't hesitate. I refuse. Vorex's expression darkened. So be it. Prepare for the consequences, Captain. The tyrannies will be at your doorstep before you can react. And once it arrives, there will be no retreat. The connection flickered and the screen went dark, leaving Elara alone with her officers. The silence that followed was deafening. Captain, Carter said quietly, his voice strained with concern. What now? Elara didn't respond right away. She was thinking, calculating. We've bought ourselves some time. The Council is underestimating us, thinking we're just going to fold. They'll come for us, yes. But we'll be ready. Asha nodded, her face resolute. We won't back down. No, Elara agreed. We won't. We fight. And this time, we make them understand what happens when they push humanity too far. The room was filled with the weight of their decision, the echoes of their resolve reverberating through the walls of the Regulus. There was no turning back now. The war had already begun, and humanity would stand tall, no matter what came next. The hum of the Regulus engines was drowned out by the blaring alarms. Elara Hayes stood at the helm, her gaze fixed on the view screen, her hands gripping the console. The moment of reckoning had arrived. The Tyrannies was on them, its massive form silhouetted against the cold expanse of space, a monolith of destruction and power. It was only a matter of time before the Council's dreadnought unleashed its full fury on humanity's fleet. Captain, the Tyrannies is in range. Asha Tran's voice broke the stillness, tight with urgency. They're preparing to fire. We're outgunned, Captain? This is it. Elara didn't look away from the screen. The fleet had taken damage. Their smaller ships were scattered, struggling to regroup after the earlier ambush. Humanity was wounded, but not broken. They had one last chance, one final strike to make their stand against the overwhelming might of the Council. Commander Carter, status report on the fleet, Elara said, her voice steady, despite the tension in the air. Carter's expression was grim as he surveyed the tactical display. We're holding our ground, but we won't last long at this rate. We've lost contact with several ships. The Tyrannies is charging its main cannon. If that shot connects, we're done for. We won't let it connect, Elara replied, her voice hardening. Get us in range for a direct strike. We're not running from this fight. A tense silence filled the bridge as the crew worked in unison, adjusting course, firing off occasional shots to disorient the Tyrannies' smaller ships, the distractions a mere nuisance compared to the real threat looming before them. Elara's fingers danced across the console, initiating the final sequence. She knew that even if they were outgunned, even if the odds were overwhelmingly against them, they had one advantage: they weren't predictable. All ships hold your fire, Elara ordered, her eyes narrowing as the Tyrannies prepared to launch its deadly energy blast. Wait for my command. The seconds dragged on like hours. The Tyrannies loomed larger on the screen, its weapons fully charged, ready to strike. Every moment felt like it could be their last. Captain, Carter called, his voice tight with frustration. This is madness. We need to strike first, or we'll be wiped out in seconds. Elara's gaze never left the screen. She was calculating. Every inch of the battlefield mattered. One wrong move, one misstep, and the human fleet would be obliterated. I know, Commander. Just give me a few more seconds, Elara said, her voice unwavering. We need to get close enough to land a solid hit. Just hold your position. Sir? Asha spoke up, her voice hesitant. Their main cannon's almost fully charged. If they fire, we're dead. Then we make sure they don't get the chance, Elara replied. Now, execute the maneuver. Full speed ahead, and then brake to port, fast. Carter hesitated but followed her orders. The ship lurched forward, pushing past the outer rings of debris left by the wreckage of the Council's smaller ships. Elara's eyes flicked to the display, watching the arc of the Tyrannies' cannon as it charged. She could almost feel the heat of the blast, could almost hear the destruction it would bring. Now! She shouted. In an instant, the Regulus shifted course, rocketing forward at full speed. The Tyrannies fired. Elara's heart raced as the massive beam of energy lashed out, a streak of white-hot destruction. It tore through the space they had just vacated, obliterating everything in its path. The Regulus barely dodged it, but the ship's shields trembled under the intensity of the near miss. "Brace for impact!" Carter yelled as the shockwave rattled the ship. Elara held her ground, her knuckles turning white against the console. "Don't let up. Keep pushing forward." They were almost there. The Tyrannies' guns were recharging, but the human fleet was closing in fast. Elara had a moment, just a moment, before the Tyrannies could fire again. She had to make it count. "Target their engines," she barked. "Full power to the front shields. We're going through them." Johnson, the weapons officer, confirmed the order. "Aye, Captain." Locking on. The Regulus surged forward, its engines screaming as they pushed past their limits. For a moment, Elara was sure they were flying straight into the maw of the beast. Then the countdown began. 3, 2, 1, fire! The Regulus' primary weapons discharged, and a torrent of energy surged toward the Tyrannies. The beams hit their mark, one directly on the enemy's engine core. The Tyrannies shuddered violently, and a brilliant explosion erupted along its side. For a moment, everything stopped. The bridge crew held their breath, waiting for the inevitable return fire. But nothing came. The Tyrannies was crippled. Its massive guns stopped firing, its shields flickering erratically. It was vulnerable. "Now everyone hit them with everything you've got!" Elara shouted. "Don't give them time to recover." The fleet responded immediately. The human ships, battered but determined, poured their fire into the Tyrannies. Beams of energy slammed into the flagship from every direction, striking weak points and tearing through its once impenetrable defenses. "Captain, they're failing! Shields are down to 20%! Carter shouted. Elara felt a surge of hope, but she kept her focus. "Push them further. We've got them on the ropes. This ends today." The final assault was quick. A volley of precise shots struck the heart of the Tyrannies, severing key systems and igniting critical explosions deep within the ship. The once proud vessel groaned as it began to break apart, its massive hull fragmenting under the weight of humanity's fury. "We did it!" Carter whispered in disbelief, his voice a mixture of exhaustion and relief. "It's over." Elara stared at the crumbling remains of the Tyrannies, her chest tight with the rush of victory. But even in the face of their triumph, she knew it wasn't over. The Council would never accept this loss quietly. But for now, humanity had proven its worth. They had stood tall against an unbeatable foe and shown the galaxy that they would not be controlled. "Set course for home," Elara said, her voice steady, her gaze fixed on the wreckage of the Tyrannies. "But stay alert. The war is far from over." The Regulus turned slowly, its engines powering down as the remnants of the battlefield lay scattered in space. Humanity had won this battle, but the next would come soon enough. And when it did, Elara would be ready. For now they had won. And that was enough.